All right, good morning. I want to thank you all for your patience as I'm dealing with my eye issue. I had a detached retina about a week and a half ago, and I had an emergency surgery then. And my vision still is not completely back to where I would want it to be, but I can't see well enough to teach this course, I think. But if I stumble over something, or if I'm a little late in grading or responding to you, it very well could be because of my eye issue. And again, I appreciate your patience. All right, we went over a couple things. So I'm going to pull up the example I had for week 3, and we're going to take a look at it. We had 2 pages that were linked together. And let's open up finished. And a few things that you notice is that there's links on the page, and there's a couple different kinds of links. We'll briefly take a look at these to review. For example, if I click on networking, I scroll to where networking is visible. If I click back to the top, I go back to the top. Now this link is a little different. It goes to another one of my web pages, and I can go back home. This link is a little different as well, as the link goes to Android, which is a website that I have not developed. So that's an external link. All right, let's look at this code and just spend a minute to review it before we get into the main topic of today. Now, I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code, which is a different way to edit your web pages. My first few classes, we use Notepad to do that, and you're still welcome to use Notepad to do that. But for those of you that want to try Visual Studio Code, that can be a very useful tool in editing web pages, because it shows you some things that you might be overlooking. So let's open this up in Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to make the font bigger. And let's review. Let's review the code that we have here. Let's start by ignoring line 8. We'll get to line 8 in a few minutes here, but this has all the basic parts of a web page that we've talked about. It has a doc type declaration at the top, has the HTML tag at the top, and the end HTML tag at the bottom. It has the head tag, which contains the title, and at some point it's going to contain this link. In fact, let's just delete this link tag for now. We'll put it back later. But the head tag contains the title. The body tag contains a header, a nav section, and at the bottom, a footer. Now, I know that their names are almost the same, but the header is different than the head. The header is a section of the body, and that corresponds to what you see at the very top of the page. So like this stuff is the header. This is the nav. Each one of these sections is an article. Now, why do we do this? It might not look like it makes any difference as far as the way that it displays, and it might not, but immediately. But when we later on add some CSS code, that is cascading style sheet code, to this page, then we'll be able to see the difference that these cause, because we'll be able to style these things to look a certain way. For example, we can make all articles have a border around them, or make all articles have a certain color font or a certain color background. We notice the links. When we have a pound sign like this, that's a link to a section of the page. So it links to the thing that has an ID of this. So href equals pound sign programming. The link will take you to the section of the page that has an ID of programming. Remember, IDs have to be unique. That is, you can only have one ID of a given name on a page. So we cannot have two things with an ID of programming on this page. All right. We put these this navigation in an unordered list. And unordered lists start with a UL, end with the UL, and are comprised by a set of list items, LIs. And then within those LIs, we can put our links, or it could be just a list of things. It doesn't have to be links. This is all hopefully review for you. Our link to one of our own pages is, because these pages are in the same folder, final or finished and tutorial are in the same folder. So to create a link, all we have to do is say tutorial.html. We have to specify the full file name. And if it's in the same folder, that's all we need to put, is just the file name, tutorial.html. When we go to another page out on the web, we have to use the whole address. And you can get that simply by going to the web page that you want. Copy it. And put it right in the HTML code. Links to the top are with the pound sign. Links to open up the email client starts off with an href of mail to : and then you have an email address. So if you're not familiar with these, please review them. Please review that example in week 3 to see how all those links work and to see what you need to do to get them to work. Now remember, with the link, you always have the link information in the start A tag. You have the text that's going to be clicked on, and then you have the end A tag. And we have, as you can see, we have within the body, we have our header, our nav, which is an unordered list, a series of articles, and finally a footer at the bottom. All of these are part of the body. All right, let's start styling the page. And by doing that, we're going to add CSS code. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. And throughout the lecture, we'll see what I mean by cascading. First thing I'm going to want to do is a very basic, is I'm going to change the background color of this page. Now you can put CSS code in your web page a couple different ways. I'm going to show you the first way, and then we'll go and do the second way in a couple minutes here. But the first way to do it is by putting a style tag. The style tag tells the browser that the code between the style tag is not HTML code, but is CSS code. CSS is a separate language. It's a language to describe how a page is going to look and how a page is going to be laid out. All right. Therefore, we need to tell the browser, hey, this isn't HTML you're dealing with. This is CSS code. That is going to appear. That's incorrect. It's not going to appear as part of the title. It's going to appear as part of the head, however. And the very simplest form of CSS is to put the name of an HTML tag. So I'm going to put the word body. That's called the selector. That says what on the page gets this particular style rule. All right. And I'm going to give a background color of yellow. Now notice that as you type these in, the IntelliSense sort of shows you what your choices are. And that's one thing that's very useful about using Visual Studio Code. And if we save this and look at it, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to hit refresh. And there we see our page is yellow. So let's look at how this basic example is accomplished. We have our style tag. We have a selector. And the selector says what on the page gets this style rule. The stuff between the curly brackets is called a style rule. It says what on the page do we want to look and how we want it to look. So in this case, we want to change the background color of the page. We have a colon. And then we have the value of the color that we want it to be. In this case, yellow. Now, what color names are usable? There's a whole bunch of them, and you're not expected to memorize them all. Certainly all the basic ones, red, green, blue, yellow, purple, aqua, and so on. You can get a full list of color names by just Googling it. So let's go here and Google HTML color names. And it shows you 140 colors are supported. Or it shows 140 colors. So we could make the background on this one. We don't want yellow. We can make the background color khaki. And there we get that, which I like a little bit. It's a little less harsh on the eyes than pure yellow is. All right, so breaking this down, we have selector. Then we have in curly bracket the style rule, which says what gets what. In other words, the background color is khaki. Now, we can't just type any old thing here or here. We have to type in the allowable values. And as part of learning CSS is learning what all the things are that we can put in here. So background color is one of the things that we can put in there, background dash color. We can actually abbreviate that just to say background. And because we have a color there, it knows that you mean background color. And that works just the same. Now, if I want the color of the text, that is the color property. So I'm going to put as the color dark green. That's one of the allowable colors. Again, it showed up on my list. And I think you can tell that the color on this page, this text now, is now a dark green. Already, we have made this page look a lot nicer than just the plain, black text on a white background. Now notice that doesn't affect links. Links are sort of their own thing, and we'll talk about those links at some point going forward. Now we can change the selector. For example, maybe I don't want everything on the page to have a background of khaki and a color of dark green. Maybe I only want the H1s. So I could say H1 background khaki, color dark green. These little color swatches that it shows are simply things that Visual Studio puts in to make it a little easier for you. And notice now only the H1s have that style rule. I'm going to close out this, and I'm going to open this up in Notepad because I know some of you probably want to use Notepad. So I'll right mouse on this, open with. Notepad. And there you can see background khaki, color dark green. So I can add other selectors. So for example, I could say the opposite for H2s. I could make the background dark green. And the color khaki. So the color of the text will be khaki. And the color of the background will be dark green. So I can save this and refresh it. And now we have that going on. Now, the way your page looks is going to be a combination of two things. It's going to be a combination of the browser defaults along with the style sheet rules that you put in. So what are the browser defaults? Well, we've been looking at those the whole semester. White background, black text, links are blue, visited links are cyan, I think that is. All right. So if we don't have any style rules, that's what we get. Cut all these style rules out. Save it. We're back to where we were before. But we can then put on top of this these different style rules that specify the colors of things. Now, there's a couple other ways to put the color in that we want. One of them is using the name. And again, there's a lot of names available, 140 of them, I think that page said. We can also look, and there's also something called a hex code. And you can see underneath here, they show the text code. Let me make it bigger. It starts with the pound sign and then has 6 characters after it. This is what is called hexadecimal code. Hexadecimal is like our decimal number system, except the difference is there are 16 digits. Instead of 0 through 9, you have 0 through F. So the digits that are available in hex are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. And they're grouped in sets of two. There's 3 sets of 2s. Didn't want that. All right, let's look at an example. Just like 9 is the largest digit in our decimal system, F is the largest digit in our hexadecimal numbering system. So this is 3 pairs of numbers, and each of these control one of the primary colors: red, green, and blue. So FF means we have a maximum amount of red. Imagine if we had 3 lights that we were focusing on a circle on the screen. FF means that the red light is turned on full blast. Zero, zero means, for green, means that we have no green in it. So the green lamp would be off, as would the blue. 0, 0 for blue means that the blue, like the green, would be shut off completely. So this color, FF0000, is pure red. So I could put, for color, instead of red, I could put # FF0000. And notice our text here is red. If we turn this on a little, if we turn this off a little bit to a lower number, we're still going to get predominantly red, but it's going to be a darker shade of red, because we've turned the red light down a little bit. There you can see it's a darker shade of red. And then we can mix colors. So I could put in a mix of red, no green, and the same amount of blue. And that's the shade of purple. This would be all red, red turned up high, blue turned up high. I'm going to set what? The background of the body. And that is that kind of color. If I make the blue a higher number than the red, this becomes a little more bluish. If I flip them and make the red higher than the blue, then it's going to be even more reddish. Now, here's the nice thing, that if you didn't follow my explanation of how these color hex codes are formed, you can just copy them, because there's a number of websites that do this. So for example, if I wanted forest green, or yeah, let's say forest green, I could copy that code And even if I don't understand how that works, I can put that in, and the background of the page will be forest green. Now, do pay attention of how things appear up against it. For example, these links start to become less visible, as well as these links. You know, I wouldn't put a purple page with blue background links on it, because that will make it very difficult to read. All right, I told you there was two ways to do this, that we could put our style page, our style code, right as part of the page. But the cooler way to do it is to create a separate file that contains the style sheet code. And that's what I did in this example. I called it site.css. And then I can apply that style sheet to both my pages. And this is the line that does that. Again, the assumption here is that everything is in the same directory. Because if it's in the same directory, all I have to do is put in this line and it links to it. Now, this is a different kind of link than a link that you click on and go to another web page. All right, this is a link to an external style sheet, which allows you to put different colors in and different things. Now, I'm using color as an example because these are the most obvious things that we can change is the color. You know, unless you're colorblind, which if that's true, I apologize. You can tell the colors right off. But we can change every aspect of the page. We can change the font. We can change the size of the font. We can change the width of things on the screen, and so on. And we'll see examples of how to do that. We're going to be covering CSS a lot in this class. This is not the only lecture we're going to have on it. So I'll go over some of the main usages for it, and then as we go on and as we progress through the class, we'll cover more and more. So notice when we create that external style sheet, I changed two things. I changed the background and color of the body and of the H1s. I've also changed the font size of the H1s. And I change it by saying 4M. What does 4M mean? It means it's emphasized 4 times, which means it's 4 times as big as normal. So if you notice in these pages, the H1s are really, really, really big. Now, how do you get colors that match? Well, some people have a gift for that. You know, you can tell by the clothes that they wear that, you know, hey, they have a knack for matching colors that go together well. But there is some science to that as well. And there are tools on the web that help you pick matching colors and create color schemes for your website. And that's what I'd like to look at now. And these are called HTML color generators. color palette generator. Okay. Actually, I don't like this. This allows you to pick a color. So maybe I want my base color to be this kind of red. I click generate and it will show me colors that will go well with that. Different palettes. Let's go and try this out and see how it works in our example. I'm going to set the background of the page to be that color. I'm going to set the color to be white. White and black and shades of gray you sort of get for free. That doesn't really count as one of your choices. In general, you want to have maybe 3, 4, or 5 colors. You don't want to overwhelm people with colors. And you want to use colors in a meaningful way. In this case, we're using colors to sort of divide the page into sections so that we can easily see stuff that belongs together by putting the H1s in a different color that will visually divide the page into sections for people to see. So let's try this out. Okay, I don't like that. Too powerful in the red section. So let's tone it down a little bit. Let's maybe use this color, which is basically white, but a little bit off. Yeah, it's a nice color palette with this. Notice how this sort of separates the page into sections. And we can see the page. Now, the advantage of using an external page, external style sheet like this is I link to it in both my pages. Changes I make to one page are immediately reflected on the other page. So our home has the same look to it. Now, one thing that we can do, in addition to colors, is we can set the width of things. So a lot of times, pages that go all the way across the screen like this are sometimes hard to read because your eye has to follow it all the way across. So what we can do is we can set things to have a certain width. And we can do that in the external CSS file. And we can say, for example, header with 700 pixels. A pixel corresponds to like a dot on the screen. And when we do that, we get this. And we could do that to all of our other sections too. So I could do header, nav, article. This is a selector where we select multiple things simply by separating them by commas. Footer. Makes it a little easier to read. And we can center this if we want, simply by saying margin left, auto, margin right, auto. We'll talk more about margins later on, but margins are essentially the space between things on your web page. So here we're saying we want all these things to automatically be set in between the edges of the web page. So notice how with just a little bit of code, less than 10 lines of code, even including the blank lines in between things, we have made our page go from looking very boring and very generic, like this, and we've made our page start to look a lot more like a professional web page, like this. So you're welcome on all your assignments to go crazy with CSS. Do as much as you want to. By all means, we haven't covered everything in CSS. We've only really scratched the surface. If you go to Canvas, there are tutorials I have about how to do different things in CSS. Please explore them, all right? And find out how to do things. Find out how to change the fonts. Find out how to change the color of links, and so on. Now, my example for week 4, I believe is the same example, just with a different style sheet than the one I developed here. I actually have 2 versions of this. I have this with a background image. And then I have this one that looks like this. These are the exact same HTML. The only thing I've changed is the CSS. So you can make things look wildly different simply by using different CSS code. So take a look at these examples. Take a look and review them and see all the different things that we can do. We'll keep coming back to this throughout the entire semester. As I said, we're definitely not done with CSS code. But review how we do these things. How do we get a background image? Get a background image like this. How do we change the font? What are padding? What is padding, rather? A good way to test that out is by looking at the page and changing it. What happens when I make this 24? And then view the page. So play with these. Every person that I know that was good in software or web development has taken examples and just played with them and change things around and see what the effect of the changes are. All right, does anyone have any questions? All right, for next week, be sure you have read the project requirements because we'll start talking about them in class. If there are no more questions, that's all I had today. We will either see you in lab or see you next week.